If you believe that heroes only wear uniforms or carry badges, then you've never heard the sound of redemption rumbling down a quiet main street at 9 in the morning. In the small mountain town of Cedar Hollow, where nothing more dramatic than a missed delivery usually made the weekly paper, the day everything changed began with the thunder of engines, so loud it shook dust from the rafters of the old Cornerstone diner. Forks paused halfway to mouths, coffee cups hovered midair, and conversations snapped in half as a formation of black and chrome motorcycles rolled slowly into the gravel lot, sunlight flashing off polished metal like warning signals. At the front rode a man everyone recognized, but no one truly knew Caleb Iron. Hayes. He was tall in the way that made doorframes seem smaller, broad across the shoulders, his leather vest worn and creased from years on the road. A faded scar cut through his eyebrow, and his beard was flecked with gray that spoke less of age and more of experience. People in Cedar Hollow whispered about him. Some said he'd done terrible things in his youth. Others said he'd done brave ones. What was certain was that when Caleb walked into a room, the air rearranged itself around him. Inside the diner, sunlight spilled across red vinyl booths and checkered floors, catching dust motes that floated lazily in the morning glow. The smell of bacon and fresh coffee wrapped around the space like a familiar blanket, but comfort drained quickly as the bikers filed in behind their leader, boots heavy against tile, patches stitched across their backs, the Iron Saints. Locals exchanged uneasy glances. Fear is often born from imagination, and imagination had worked overtime in Cedar Hollow. Behind the counter moved a waitress named Lila Bennett, 28 years old, with soft brown hair usually tied back in a loose ponytail and eyes that carried a constant flicker of watchfulness. Her smile was polite, practiced, the kind that hides exhaustion. As she approached Caleb's booth to pour coffee, the sleeve of her uniform shifted just enough to reveal a faint bruise along her wrist, yellowing at the edges, poorly hidden beneath foundation. Caleb noticed. Men like him are trained by life to notice what others ignore. Layla kept her gaze down, her hands steady but too careful, like someone walking across thin ice. Caleb said nothing at first. He simply watched. And as he watched, something old and heavy stirred inside him, a memory of a sister he once failed to protect, a phone call he never answered. In time, a regret that had followed him across state lines and sleepless nights. From the kitchen doorway emerged the diner's manager, a thick-necked man named Gordon Pike, whose voice always seemed set to shout even when speaking softly. He barked an order at Layla for moving too slow. She flinched. It was small, almost invisible, but Caleb saw it. He saw the way her shoulders tightened, the way she whispered an apology for something that wasn't her fault. Hours passed. The lunch rush came and went. The Iron Saints lingered longer than expected, their presence filling the space but their behavior surprisingly restrained, quiet, observant, not the chaos many had predicted. Just as the afternoon lull settled in, Gordon brushed past Lila deliberately, knocking a tray from her hands. Plates shattered against tile. The crash echoed. Lila knelt immediately, apologizing over and over as if gravity itself had been her mistake. Gordon's words cut sharp in public, meant to humiliate. A few customers looked uncomfortable. None intervened. Caleb's jaw tightened, a muscle ticking beneath weathered skin. That night, sleep avoided him. In his garage on the edge of town, beneath the hum of a flickering fluorescent light, he sat on a stool staring at nothing while the scent of oil and metal surrounded him. He replayed the diner scene again and again. He remembered the hospital corridor from years ago, the sterile smell, the unbearable weight of knowing silence can be a form of betrayal. He had built his life around never feeling that helpless again. By dawn, his decision was made. The next morning, Cedar Hollow heard the engines before they saw them. The Iron Saints returned, parking in a deliberate line outside the diner as townsfolk peeked through curtains and storefront windows. Inside, Leela froze when she spotted them through the glass. Fear flashed across her face, but something else lived there too, hope, fragile and dangerous. Caleb entered alone this time, removing his gloves slowly as he approached the counter. He took a seat and waited until Lila approached. When she did, he looked directly at her, not at the bruise, not at the uniform, but at her. "Are you safe here?" he asked quietly. She nodded too quickly. He didn't look away. "You don't have to pretend," he said, voice calm, steady, not demanding. Something in his tone, firm but kind, cracked the armor she'd built around herself. Her composure faltered. Tears welled before she could stop them. Gordon stormed out from the back, irritation already loaded in his expression, but he stopped when he saw Caleb standing. One by one, the other bikers rose from their seats behind him, not aggressive, not shouting, just present. The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. Caleb stepped closer to Gordon, close enough that his shadow crossed the manager's polished shoes. "Respect isn't complicated," Caleb said evenly. "You either give it, or you show everyone who you are without it." Gordon tried to laugh it off, tried to regain control with bluster, but his voice cracked under the weight of 30 steady gazes. Power built on fear collapses quickly when fear shifts direction. He muttered something under his breath and retreated to his office, slamming the door hard enough to rattle picture frames. For a moment, no one moved. Then an elderly man at a booth near the window began to clap slow, deliberate. Others followed. Not loud, not wild, just sincere. Leela covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Caleb turned back to her. "You deserve better," he said simply. The following days brought change Cedar Hollow hadn't expected. Word spread fast in small towns. Customers began asking questions. Former employees shared stories. Within a week, Gordon Pike resigned under pressure from the diner's owner, who claimed he'd had no idea how things were being handled. Leela found herself offered a management position at a cafe across town, owned by a woman who valued dignity more than dominance. The Iron Saints, once regarded as trouble waiting to happen, became something else entirely in the town's narrative. They organized a weekend charity ride for the local women's shelter. They repaired the playground at Cedar Hollow Elementary. They showed up not as myths, but as men, flawed, complicated, trying. Caleb didn't seek recognition. He continued riding, continued leading, but something in him shifted. Protecting Lila hadn't erased his past, but it softened its sharpest edges. Sometimes he stopped by her new workplace, sitting quietly at a corner table, exchanging small talk that carried no pressure. Leila's laughter returned gradually, first cautious, then free. She stood taller now, meeting customers' eyes without flinching. Months later, as autumn painted the mountains gold and crimson, Cedar Hollow no longer tensed at the sound of engines. Instead, children ran to the sidewalks to wave. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped low and cast long shadows across Main Street, Lila stood outside her cafe and watched the familiar line of motorcycles glide past. Caleb lifted 2 fingers from his handlebar in a silent greeting. She smiled back, understanding something that perhaps the whole town was just beginning to learn, that strength and kindness are not opposites, that sometimes the people who look the hardest carry the softest hearts, and that courage doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it arrives loud, unapologetic, and on 2 wheels. If this story reminded you that compassion can come from unexpected places, take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that prove humanity is still very much alive.